Hey, it's Screw the System Joe, and I'm back with another new video. Now today is a little bit of an experiment because I'm going to do this video freestyle. Now usually when I create my videos I rehearse the hell out of them. I write a script, I memorize the lines, and it usually takes me 10 plus takes to just do one scene. So it's a long and tough process, and that's why today I've decided that I'm going to do it freestyle, straight off the top of my head, inspiration and information. So let's see how it goes. So the subject of today's video is a film I saw recently called The Walk. Now it's about a high wire walker called Phillippe Petit, whose dream was to lay a wire between the two twin towers and walk from one side to the other. Now, it actually happened back in the 1970s. Now, not only is it a great movie, it also provides a brilliant template for all you dreamers out there who want to achieve something with your life. I identified 9 key stages that we've all got to pass through. You know, whether our dream is to become a professional sports star, whether it's a dream like mine to have a best-selling book, to become a musician, or start up your own business. I've identified 9 key stages that you've got to go through in order to realize that dream. So let's start today with number 1. So the first step to realizing your dream is, of course, the moment of inspiration. And you can see we've got the light bulb down there to symbolize that flash and that moment when you feel truly inspired. Now in the film The Walk, this Phillippe Petit's moment of inspiration came after he had a toothache, or a cracked tooth, which sent him to the dentist, and he saw in a magazine a picture of the two twin towers, and he said he could hear them calling out to him, crying out to him for him to lay a wire in between them and walk them. Now it's very interesting the words he used to describe it, because what he was talking about was an undeniable force, like falling in love. It hit him that hard. And what you've got to look for is some similar emotions. Now you may have had this already about a particular plan or project or business. That thing just hits you so hard that you know you've got to do it. It may be a vision in your mind, a feeling in your body. Whatever it is, listen to those signals, because they tell you something is important is happening and you must follow it. Now, it's also interesting to note that Steve Jobs, in one of his interviews, which I'll try to include a link for below, talks about why passion is so important. And he says the reason passion is so important is because when your dream gets tough, and it will do, it's that passion that's going to carry you through and see you through all those moments when you question even your own sanity and thinking, is this whole thing worthwhile? Now that's why you need the passion, and that's why you need a moment of inspiration. So once you've had your moment of inspiration, you then move on to step number 2. So the second step to achieving your dream is breaking free. And in the film where we see this is when Phillippe Petit, our main character, is kicked out of his family home by his parents. Now they say that he hasn't got a real job, that what he's doing isn't respectable, and he's not earning any money. Because at the time he was working as a street performer in Paris, riding around on a unicycle and juggling. Now the point of breaking free may not be forced upon you in that way. It may come when you quit your job or end a relationship and move on to a more inspiring path. Whatever the case, it will tend to conform to this ideal of the hero's journey, which Joseph Campbell created. And he basically says that every hero who wants to achieve something significant with their life must pass through a certain number of steps, pretty similar to what I'm explaining today. Anyway, he talks about crossing the threshold, this point of no return where you leave your old world behind, something I call the systems world. You leave the systems world where you're chasing money or you're chasing respect and status. You break free from that and enter this exciting new world of your dream. So you must prepare for yourself for that. It's probably one of the hardest stages of the whole 9 that we're going to explore, because you're faced with a very stark reality. You're on your own. You may have less money. You may have less respect and status. can you handle that experience? That's what you've got to ask yourself as we move on to step 3 now. So the third stage to achieving your dream is the training phase. And here we've got our little character pumping its dumbbells, but it won't always be a case of physical training. It's just that it's time to perfect your craft. So in the film we had Phillippe Petit practicing his street performance, also practicing high wire walking between trees in his spare time as well. Now he was scraping by a living. As you can remember, he got kicked out of his family home, and this may often be the case with you as well, as you're seeking to achieve your dream, that you've got to scrape a living doing it, but you get to learn something really important. You don't need a whole lot of material stuff when you have an inspiring dream to keep you entertained and inspired every single day of your life. So it's worth considering that although your material riches may be less during the training period, your true riches in terms of inspiration will be a lot higher, because you have to put in those 10,000 hours or something close to that to become an expert or a master in your field. So my big tip for you, my little take home here, is that you should try to work in something related to your dream. Try to find a way of making money, even if it's not exactly the dream that you want to be doing. Just try to do it in a related field. So for example, for me, my dream is to have a best-selling book, also to be a coach and a speaker. Well, I've been working as a tennis coach and a hypnotherapist for well over 10 years. So I've got to put a lot of those hours in and perfected my craft, even though it wasn't in the exact manner of my dream. It was something related very closely. So that's important to bear in mind as we now move on to step number 4. So the fourth phase in achieving your dreams is the failure phase. And in the film we can see that when Phillippe does his first public wire walk, which ends in disaster when he falls off his wire and ends up in a lake. The really important thing to take about the failure phase is, first of all, that it will happen. Secondly, that it happens to everyone. And thirdly, that it leads to greater knowledge and skill. It is not a negative. And you can see this in the film. After Phillippe falls in the water, he seeks out a veteran wire walker called Papa Rudy, who teaches him more about the skill of walking and especially about fixing the wires at the 2 different sides that you're then going to walk across. So it's not a disastrous event, it's actually an event that leads to greater knowledge and skill, because then Phillippe becomes a better wire walker after his experience. The most important thing to remember about this failure phase is that you must not let it damage your belief in yourself. You have to treat it as a moment of calibration. It's something that's telling you that you need to get better, or there's an area you need to improve on. So for example, say you're an actor and you go to an audition and it doesn't work out, you get rejected. The question is, what do I need to work on? What do I need to improve? Never, never must you let it damage your belief in yourself, because if you lose that, you've lost everything. So you must embrace the failure phase and change the meaning of it. And then move on to step number 5. So the 5th phase to achieving your dream is building your team. And you can see here with the characters that Phillippe had to assemble a team of a few key people in order for him to realize his dream. He had his girlfriend, which was his emotional support. He had an inside man who actually worked inside the Twin Towers and who could enable him to get up to the top on the roof. And he also had a photographer who would capture the whole event. So the message here is, don't try and do it alone. You are going to need people around you. Even with somebody like me who's written a book, I still needed people around me. Even though the work I was doing was very much on my own, I had to have a writing mentor. I have somebody who helps me with SEO. I have friends who spread my work on Facebook and other mediums, whatever you're doing, you will need to have a team of people around you. So I guess the question is, how do you create that team? And it's something that's very difficult to force. You can't make people believe in what you believe and try to help you. It's more a case of being brave enough to tell people about your dream, and the right people will be attracted towards you. And when I say be brave enough to tell people about your dream, I know it can be difficult to express something so personal to yourself, and also stands a high chance of being ridiculed and laughed at. I mean, take for example Philippe's dream of laying a wire between the Twin Towers and walking across it. I mean, how impossible is that? How many people must have just laughed at him, or actually in his case warned him that he was going to die if he tried to do it. So there must have been a lot inside him that wanted to go within and hold his dream in, but you cannot do this. You have to be brave enough to tell people about your dream, be honest and upfront with them, and if they want to help, then they will. That, I find, is the best way to build the team. It's quite difficult to force. So bear that in mind as we move on to step number 6. So phase number 6 of achieving your dreams is focus on strategy. And in our picture here we have Philippe looking up at the Twin Towers and figuring out how he's going to get his wire across the middle of them to enable him to do the walk. And it took him, and you see in the film, it took him months of meticulous planning and strategizing to figure out how he was going to do it. He had to disguise himself and go to the towers and scope out the different timings of when the guards were there and when they weren't, and how he was going to get to the top. And it revealed a very interesting thing to me, and a point which I think rings true for most people with a dream, that the strategy phase is harder than the training phase. That mastering the skill you may think is really tough and difficult, but it's actually not as difficult as getting your product or skill or message out there. Because I would think that in most people's cases, you're not going to be planning how to get to the top of a tower or planning how to rob a bank. You are in fact wanting to get your skill or product out into the world, into the marketplace, and for people to notice. Because having a great skill or product is just not enough. It shouldn't be that way, but I'm afraid it is. I mean, think about it like this. How many better singers must there be out there than One Direction or Justin Bieber? There's probably thousands or tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, but they're not getting their voice heard. And it's a real shame, but you have to consider this step number 6 of your strategy, how you're going to get your message out there. And if you want a quick tip, there's something good in Arnold Schwarzenegger's book called Total Recall. He wanted to become an actor after being a bodybuilder, and anyone who's seen him act will know he's not the most naturally talented or gifted, but he put himself in that position, and he said he did it by being outrageous. He would say crazy stuff, pull stunts that all grabbed attention towards him and made directors and producers want him to be in their film. So that's something you need to consider for step number 6, because this can be one of the hardest steps you will face. So let's now move on to step number 7. So phase number 7 is adapting to circumstances. And in our picture here we have Philippe with a nail through his foot, because while he was preparing the whole ascent to the top with his wire, he stepped on a nail and it went right through his foot. And as you can imagine, for a wire walker, this is an incredible hindrance. I mean, he's got this blood pouring out, he's got to bandage the foot. You would think he wouldn't be able to use it to its full capacity. So he had to adapt to circumstances. And the thing to learn from this is that nothing will run smoothly. It isn't going to be a straight ascent to the top for you. There will be curveballs and obstacles that get in your way, and you have to adapt to them. And the thing you have to remember that helps you do this is to focus on the goal and not the side issues. You could see with Philippe that even though his foot was in plaster and then he was in pain, he was so focused on getting across that wire when it finally came to walking that it didn't really seem to matter. His mind was so powerful that it switched off from the pain in his foot, and instead he had to focus on the physical action of what he was actually doing. Now this can apply for you as well, because a lot of things and a lot of obstacles will get in your way, but you just have to keep your end goal in mind and focus on that. Having said that, there may come a point where you have to adapt your dreams slightly because of the circumstances that will arise. I mean, with myself, I wrote a great book, put it on Amazon Kindle, but naively thought that that was all I had to do. You know, there was no marketing that went into it. I hadn't built a following already. I just whacked it on there and hoped that somehow it would sell because it was a good book. What I've learned is that perhaps I'm going to have to adapt my dream. I might have to come out with a series of books. I might have to build my platform. It doesn't mean that your dream isn't valid. It just means that you might have to look at alternative ways to getting to where you want to go. So that's the thing I want you to remember from phase number 7 as we now move on to number 8. So phase number 8 is performing under pressure. And in the film, this was represented when Phillippe had to actually do the walk across the wire. However many thousand feet up he was, and him on his own with his balancing pole, he had to get from one side to the other. Can you imagine any more pressure situation than that? Now, I know it's very unlikely that you or me or anybody will have to contend with such a pressurized situation. But in the course of you realizing your dream, you will go through moments when the pressure is on. It could be an interview, it could be a talk you're giving or a performance you're giving, or it could be a match you're playing. And you, in your mind, are thinking, this is the moment, everything's on, I've got to deliver. It can cause stress, it can cause tension, which will always harm your performance. So what you've got to learn in these occasions is to love it. You've got to love those situations. And you saw Phillippe when he was doing his walk, doing it once wasn't enough. I mean, he just faced the threat of immediate death falling off, but he thought to himself, no, I've got to do more. I've got to go back out. I've got to lie down on this wire. I've got to kneel down on it. I've got to do all of these different things because he was loving it. He wasn't feeling the pressure. And there's a really important tip to remember here, which should help you in pressure situations, that you only have 2 to 4% of conscious control in any given situation. So this is over your actions or what you're saying. Only 2 to 4% of it you can directly control. The rest is subconscious. The rest is your training that you've done all over the years. The rest is the similar experiences you had coming into play. So really, there's not a whole lot you can do. So the little area that you can control, you may as well enjoy and love and get the most out of doing, because that's the best way to help you perform well. So we'll now move on to the final stage, step number 9. So finally we have step number 9, achieving your dream. And here we have Phillippe standing on the top of the Twin Towers with his hands aloft, having made the walk. And for you it might be when you've sold your millionth copy of your book, or sold your millionth product or units, gone out to the market. Whatever you identify as the point where you've realized your dream, this is the moment. And it sort of leads to the question of why dreams are so important to us. And in the film, Phillippe described it as an intense moment of joy when he'd completed the walk. And it really comes down to this question of what you make your life about. Is it about pleasure or joy? Because pleasure can be attained by eating, it can be attained by sex, it can be attained by watching TV. It's that brief high that doesn't really stay with us for very long. But joy, on the other hand, is something which is lifelong, and it can only be attained by committing yourself to something and achieving it and seeing it through. And you can also feel it along the different stages towards realizing your dream as well. So the big question for you that I'm posing to you is, what is your life about? Is it about seeking pleasure or joy? And my encouragement to you is to find a dream for yourself if you haven't already got one. Find a dream, find something that inspires you. Commit your life to something that will bring joy into it. And you too will one day be standing on top of the mountain with your hands aloft. So before I end this video, I just want to leave you with one final thought. And it has to do with the nature of your dream being impossible. Now, the reason I chose the film The Walk as our example of somebody living their dream is because it was a totally insane and ridiculous dream that Phillippe Petit had. He wanted to walk a wire across 2 buildings that were virtually 1,400 feet high. One step to his left, one step to his right, where he slips and he's gone, he's dead. The dream was utterly crazy and insane, yet he achieved it. So I think the message when I was watching that film, the thing that really struck me was that no dream is impossible. No matter how high the mountain might seem to you at the moment, it can be achieved. And that's the message I want to leave you with today. I also want to say thank you for watching. If you found this video valuable, please like and share it and subscribe to my channel. I'll have more great videos coming out soon. Thank you and goodbye.